There's a lot of negatives to big firms, and I was in them for a long time. So when I say that, I think I'm trying to be objective. A lot of negatives, a lot of overrated, a lot of superficial BS that the general public and their clients don't get, including like institutional clients.
Tell me about yourself. So I saw that you were also a lawyer and entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I've always, Jessica, I've been trying to get out of law for 24 years now. Kind of had I had a master's degree in finance, but I never used it. I went straight through. I did a JD master's in finance program, and I never really kind of intended to be a lawyer. And then the .com, so I got out of law school and business school in 2001. The .com crash happened. I looked at working on Wall Street or something. It just seemed like there were a lot more jobs in law. There were more companies suing each other at that time than doing deals. So long story short, I worked for an awesome corporate lawyer. He's probably the most famous corporate lawyer in Colorado. He's now deceased. Awesome guy. So I couldn't have had like a better mentor. Very entrepreneurial. I used to represent athletes and stuff. I was always really entrepreneurial. Was like an NFL agent as kind of like part of my practice. And then I moved to various different large law firms and always did pretty cool stuff. So that kind of kept me there, you know. But I always kind of figured I'd either end up like a general counsel or I would go into investment banking. I've been practicing about 15 years. I was kind of just, you know, like, when am I going to make a move? I had been engaged. I was about to have my first kid. It's about 10 years ago. Or no, it was about 10 years ago. I had my first kid 8 years ago, but, you know, it's all relative, right? Interestingly, because I'd never done a drug in my entire life, but the cannabis boom here, I had a lot of clients and people that were like wanting to get into it. Mm-hmm. And so I started like getting more, looking more at that. And to make a long story short, I actually started a cannabis company. And I was kind of paying law to pay the bills, raise money, had created like a fund that invested in primarily cannabis businesses because I have a venture capital background in law and all that. Mm-hmm. So I sort of did two jobs for 4 or 5 years where I had my law firm to kind of pay the bills. I had brought in some partners for this other business. We had some success in some things. We had abject failures and other things and whatever. And after that had kind of played itself out, I go, you know, I think I'm going to finally just focus on building my own law firm and make it very entrepreneurial because I have really strong legal background, but I'm businessy and all that. So I did that, and I've kind of been through every amalgamation of that for over 10 years. I started on my own. Then I brought in a partner who I'd known, hired several attorneys that I had worked with and kind of trained in prior jobs. And then it didn't work out with me and that partner. And then that ended up being a good move for me. And so I've kind of just slowly grown the firm from, in some way, myself to, we have like 7 attorneys now. We primarily focus on helping business owners and entrepreneurs in their M&A event, if they have one. They could be selling to a private equity group or some transaction where, you know, they might have started an HVAC company, they might have started a tech company, they might have started an architecture company, kind of doesn't matter. They're really good at what they've done, but they probably don't have the transactional acumen to get through suddenly dealing with private equity and huge law firm attorneys and all that. So that's really the business. We also represent a lot of like early stage financings, venture capital, that type of stuff, and then kind of every sort of complex partnership you can imagine, as well as I created a litigation line, even though I don't do get litigation. We were getting a lot of litigation around like business divorces and so forth. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of like business partnership, putting together, dismantling them, and then when need be, we litigate. So that in a nutshell is kind of, I don't personally, but I have litigators who handle that. So that's kind of what it is. So I'm just sort of like an entrepreneur that has decided after 24 years of 23 years, actually 23 years of always thinking I was going to just kind of buckle down and make this as profitable as I can, really be a law firm. Everybody talks about, oh, we're businessy or whatever. That doesn't really mean anything to me. I mean, I've been out there, done there. I've spent several million of my own dollars in the form of like reinvesting and, like gone through the trenches of making money, losing money, good partnerships, bad partnerships. I really think that that makes you so much of a more valuable addition to business people. But for some reason, the legal world, as you know, is like slow to adapt. A lot of like large companies and a lot of people out there still think somehow these large law firms are like the end all be end, even though they charge ridiculous amounts and they're, billable hour. It's a joke, right? And so we're kind of like, I'm like this entrepreneur. Hire entrepreneurial people, and I represent people that, I'm like pseudo business guy. I manage their accountants oftentimes. Not that I'm doing the work of the accountants, but I'm doing what I need to do to execute the deal and all those kinds of things. So that's really what this is. We're very kind of boutiquey, and there are a lot of small business law firms. There's not a lot that are like your holistic advisor. Hey, you need to talk to this investment bank, or you're not ready to sell right now. You need to come back and, let's in 2 years, or that's really kind of the way we roll. And then obviously, when there's transactions, we do them and we do them effectively and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that. It's impressive too, like the way that, like you grew so much in this past few years. Like this is very, very nice. And what are the current trends in the markets that you are aware of? I know everybody's talking about AI. I don't know if you guys have been using AI or if you see any other like trends right now, especially in business, law,
Well, yeah, I mean, trends in terms of like legal tech.
legal tech. Yeah.
I mean, it's a really popular space. I get approached all the time by people. That said, I wouldn't say there's anything that's blown me away. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to have it or whatever. But I spend personally a ton of time with AI, primarily Chat GPT in the form of, we do a lot of that with our marketing, first of all. We do a ton of marketing, social media presence. So we use it for assistance there. We don't completely rely on it for the obvious reasons, because it looks AI and whatever, but it can be a very good refining tool,
Right.
In a lot of different ways. We have begun to utilize it more, like if we're dealing with cases where there might be breach of fiduciary duty claims, or that are corporate related, and there's a lot of facts. And as if you think about writing a legal demand letter or responding to a legal demand letter where it's like really intensive, where people are making claims over hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and you've got to get into all these facts. And I mean, that would take days and weeks, and it still can, to effectively deal with that stuff. And I think the hardest part about it, for me, and I think most attorneys, is kind of the organization piece. It's incredibly hard to stay organized, and that's sort of what separates generally lawyers from the general public, is that you're trained to kind of get organized, but it's a process, right?
Right.
I think AI has been pretty effective in allowing you to throw a bunch of things out there and then provide guidance and to rapidly
Right.
organize things for you. Of course, you have to work with it. Of course, you have to refine it. You have to give great prompts, great instructions, but it's really been a tool for us in that regard. I have not found it to be a tool, and I've tried other AI tools like Spellbook, which you see out there all over on Facebook, is this kind of nifty AI-driven document thing for contracts, and it'll tell you kind of like what you should negotiate, but it's not, how do I put it? It's very rudimentary. So in a lot of ways, it would be the kind of thing that it's actually more of a time drain because it's just not as evolved yet as it needs to be. So I don't really use that. And then we're always looking for new types of things and open to the AI. But right now, it's really the Chat GPT plug and play where it works, and kind of spin-offs of Chat GPT. But haven't really found yet something where I'm like, oh my God, this is like an amazing tool for doing due diligence or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard. And I'm sure that there's a lot right now that are trying. It is complicated to find one. I like ChatGPT too. I think it's pretty reliable. But you're right. Like you cannot just throw things there and think that is going to be perfect. You for sure need to refine.
I think AI in general. I also represent like an AI venture capital firm, so I've really looked a lot at with them. As part of representing them at a lot of different businesses they look to invest in and all that. We're obviously, even though AI's been around a little bit, it's obviously very novel and popular in the last couple of years, and it's going to be, I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to be a huge in every facet of our lives that we can't predict. But I would say on balance, from what I see, and again, I'm not like this expert that's knows every single AI tool, but I feel like it's a little bit overrated. I think a lot of people are relying on it way too much. Like we rebuilt our website recently. It hasn't even rolled out, but we've done a lot of work. And like I love my website crew, but they were way, way, way too reliant on some AI stuff where it can be fast to spit out an image or whatever, but sometimes it can actually slow things down because you're like, well, that's not an authentic image, or that text is nowhere near on point. And so it's kind of like one of those balances. Like a lot of times with my social, for a while, I was really doing a lot of AI, and now I'm kind of like, does it actually take me longer? And is it less beneficial than if I just sat down and did it? So that's going to be like a work in progress.
Right. With your identity, especially, I totally agree with you with the copywriting. I haven't found a way to give ChatGPT like the exactly prompt to like, hey, those are the exactly words that I usually use. This is my personality, so write something that sounds like me. I agree with that. So now that you mentioned social media, like, what social medias are you guys using? What channels?
LinkedIn, by far and away, has been our most, effective channel because it's just completely professionals for the most part and all that. But we have Facebook, we post on Facebook, not nearly as routinely, but we go for like, we're trying to accomplish something different. For example, with Facebook, like we're not doing Facebook ads and all that. We're just trying to have a very professional, fairly consistent presence so that when people do go there, it supports what we know our brand is all about. And it's more firm focused. Instagram, we have an Instagram page that's a little more hip / edgy, but still pretty firm focused. LinkedIn, we have a firm business page. We don't post a ton to it, but again, we'll do like 3 or 4 posts a month, and that supports kind of the firm foundation and all that. Now, I'm really big on doing personal oriented posts on LinkedIn. I think is what everybody's doing is personal brand building, right? So I utilize that platform. We're in the process of creating a YouTube page and all that, which will also be much more me and personality focused. I'm trying to think. I know there's other mediums. I feel like, Twitter, now X. We've also had a Twitter page or X page for years, got away from it for a long time because didn't really see the benefit. I've seen a lot of pickup where people are now better authentically building their brand, lawyers in particular on X. So that's actually a new initiative that we've relaunched, so it's pretty holistic, but by far and away, I think LinkedIn is where we spend most of our time.
Yeah, no, I like that. Is it the same way how you like capture your clients, or do you rely on other like clients acquisition like strategies? Do you do ads or cold email?
Great question. We try to be holistic optimistic and we try to be a marketing machine. It's very hard to quantify from the social media, in my opinion, what kind of your return on marketing investment is and all that. But I do notice inherently a uptick in sort of indirect things. It feels like more of a buzz when we're more active on social media. So I just have kind of chalked it up to it's got to be something that we always do. But in addition to that, our best referrals are still word of mouth. And so that like is our network. In our instance, it would be people like accountants, investment bankers. It would be other clients that we represented who might tell a colleague in their industry. Maybe we represented somebody in selling their company. They tell their friend who also runs a company in the same industry, or part of a kind of an advisory network too, where it's just sort of a call it a more high end get together. I don't want to say it's a leads group, but it's a focused sort of group with advisors brainstorming ideas to help each other generate more deals and all that. I'm part of the AMAA, which is like the American Mergers and Acquisitions Association, fairly recently. So we do a lot of grassroots things. We also do a monthly newsletter as well. So it's the whole package, really.
Yeah, because you cannot just rely on one thing, right? Like I see that a lot with the other law firms too. You some of them like rely so much on Google, and then suddenly Google changed their algorithm, and then you're screwed. Like you lose like 50% of rank.
I also have a podcast I forgot about, which we interview entrepreneurs primarily, and we just tell their story about how I have a partner for that. He's a non-lawyer, but we have sort of a very similar business philosophies. But it's about it's called Biz Mafia, and what it really is, it's about the underside of business, meaning it's a grind, right? And we've interviewed people, for example, that I've represented that tell their story from the ground up about how they started their business in a garage and so on, and went through every travail you can imagine. In some cases, have sold for $100 million or whatever the case is, in all different facets. And sometimes we'll bring on deal professionals that we talk about the art of the deal. We're not getting on there talking about legal issues and so forth.
Yeah,
that's not my intention. That's not what I want to talk about. It's really talking to interesting people and talking about the art of entrepreneurship and the art of deals, and then being a very proficient transactional advisor who happens to be an attorney, and then kind of indirectly sort of getting the benefit from that. So that's been another avenue that seems, we're about 17 episodes in. It takes a while, as you know, to get your tech down and all that other kind of stuff. So we're active, but you can never market enough, and we're always trying to find new ways, and we have inconsistencies sometimes, and it's not where I want to have it, because we're still a small business, and I'm still very hands-on, and I get pulled in a ton of directions, but we're constantly trying to go that direction of just becoming sort of a, like the business is working while we're sleeping.
Yeah, I love that. And this is so hard to do, right? Like, especially when I see that a lot too, like with other law firms, and they're usually working too much on the business instead of like in the business, or in the instead of like on the business, because it's just so challenging. And that actually brings me to another question. Has it been for you, or harder has it been for you to find high quality team members and retain them? Because I feel like sometimes
it's hard. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's very years ago when I had another kind of call it a 50-50 partner. I had hired some attorneys that I had worked with, had a ton of continuity, and it went great. But over time, and then salaries got out of control, and people are always going to do what's in their best interests. And some of these people, we probably couldn't keep up economically for what they might have had if they wanted to go to work for a national law firm. Now, there were other things and benefits, and probably long-term economically, in some instances, they probably, in my opinion, made a mistake. But the point is, it's really hard to keep good talent in these days. It's really hard to land great talent when you're a small business, because you're not able to lay out the same kind of money that a lot of your competitors are. But, at the end of the day, that's part of the challenge of entrepreneurship and your choice. It's like, I don't want to go back to that. So I could do that. I could go work at any law firm tomorrow if I wanted to. but I don't. But that is something that you have to overcome. And so you have to be really strategic. And like in our instance, spent a lot of time cultivating non-traditional relationships. Like I love women with a lot of sophistication, but maybe they want the family time availability to take care of kids or whatever, but they still have the ability to work. They make good money, women and men, but women are a great profile for that because we offer sophisticated work with a completely flex lifestyle, because the way that my firm is set up, we're primarily like a deal shop. So we're not sitting here going, oh my gosh, we got 55 estate plans that came in and we have to have. What we are is we go out, we try to get deals, we try to get a certain type of deal. When we get the deal, we have a cohesion, we try to work them together. And I have like long-term relationships with people. They're almost like a lot of glorified contractors or special counsel, or maybe I've got some men, for example, that are in their early 60s and they've wanted to slow it down and more flexibility. So we're very nimble in that regard. Now the challenge can be sometimes when things ebb and flow, you might need, it would be nice to have more people that were doing it all the time and they're the best of the best and whatever, but you can't pay an associate $300,000 a year in my business, because it kind of goes like this, and they probably wouldn't be able to weather the storm of. So it's very, very, just can't emphasize enough how entrepreneurial it is in that regard. But I'm adept, and I have a deep network, and I find people that are great attorneys that I've done deals with, and there's other ways to make it work.
Yeah. Now the competition, what is making the landscape more competitor, or like harder for you to like operate your business right now?
The deal market's down right now because of interest rates, and it has been for probably 18 months, approaching 2 years now. In mergers and acquisitions and venture capital and areas of law that are highly related to the flow of money, interest rates is going to have a similar effect, just like it does on ability to buy a home, right? The higher interest rate. So it's very similar. So there's not as much money going into companies and all that, because there's always a cost of money factor when it comes to private equity and anybody who does acquisitions. So what that has meant is we've had to buckle down a little bit, because deals haven't been as free flowing. It means that we have to work that much harder on marketing. And so the other thing that I think has been a little bit challenging is there's this odd dichotomy in law right now, where you have the big firms that are always probably going to be around. A lot of times people say they're not going to be, and there's a lot of negatives to big firms, and I was in them for a long time. So when I say that, I think I'm trying to be objective. A lot of negatives, a lot of overrated, a lot of superficial BS that the general public and their clients don't get, including like institutional clients. But that all said, you've got a lot of big business, and they're just going to have a proclivity to go to those firms. So I don't think those firms are going anywhere anytime soon. Conversely, you have a ton of like small and sole practitioners, because you can conduct your law practice with just a laptop, and it's not a capital intensive kind of business. So you have a lot at one end of the spectrum, a lot at the other end of the spectrum. There's not a ton of really effective firms, in my opinion, in the middle. So what that has made it challenging for us is we're sort of a competitor of big firms in our own way for certain types of deals that are like 10 to $100 million. We're not their competitor for deals that are $500 million or three, because we don't do those kind of deals. We're 10 to 100 million by and large, with some exceptions, right? And so what that leaves that facet of the client stuck, they can go that big firm route, which is probably doesn't make sense. And then you also have these people that are probably less experienced, but they throw out, it might be fixed pricing that really kind of has no basis in reality, where if you actually know what you're doing, you can't make any real money on it, because like for perspective, I've heard clients sometimes go, well, I'm going to sell my company for $20 million or whatever. And they're getting quotes from different attorneys, which is a very hard thing to quote clients on legal work without a ton of specifics. You can on certain things. You can on things like an estate plan. You can on certain things like a bait. You can't going, I'm going to quote you when Skadden Arps is on the other side and we don't have any information on how this deal is or isn't going to go or how organized you are or not, right? But a lot of the competition is coming out and being like, oh, we'll do that for $20,000. Something that's not grounded in any reality, and it's a real pressure challenge a lot of times because you're like, I can't do that. So what that means is we're in like kind of a boutique niche in terms of our pricing and the profile of client and all that. So it means that we have to work that much harder to find the clients that really get our value proposition, that understand we're not going to go to, single sole practitioner right out of law school guy who understands the term asset purchase agreement and is going to rubber stamp this versus Kirkland and Ellis, right? We have to find people who get exactly where we are in the market, and that's gotten harder in the last 10 years.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. That's actually one of my my bread and butter, but I'll tell you more about this. And I have a few more questions for you. I wanted to keep it under 40 minutes. What are the goals for the firm?
That's a great question. And I'm sorry, I'm hesitating because I look at this oftentimes as so day to day. We certainly have long-term goals and all that. I'm actively trying to add hopefully two, but at least one kind of high level person that fits the right profile that can make it work with their economics and that can thrive here. So I think in the next 12 months, that is definitely a goal. And, I always endeavor with where we're at. I always say like we have to have like anywhere from three to five really meaty transactions. And then we have tons of other stuff that sometimes I call ankle biters. It kind of pays the bills, but you're not really like just kind of breaking even on it. It's just kind of feeding the cycle. We like to try to get like 3 to 5 deals a year that we can really sink our teeth. The last year, and I mean, it's been more like 1 to 2 deals like that a year. Wow. Because of the status of, even though you were busy, we're busy with much smaller end stuff that's hard to make profitable, right? And the difference between that, call it 3 to 5 deals, and the 2 to 3, or call it 3 to 4, that's huge. That's huge.
Double.
In what I do. Right. We have what you would call bad customer concentration because a lot of our practice is focused on one-time clients that we sell, and the ones that we've had historically for like 10 years or more, they've all for the most part been sold. And once you're bought, typically the buyer controls who their legal counsel is and all that. So the good news on that front is that we really have developed a niche and a specialty and all that. And when the market's good, it's really good in that regard. When the market's bad, we have too much customer concentration and our revenue can swing wildly based on that. So going back to your question, it's really kind of creating even in a bad market, becoming so effective in our marketing and our target client and our business development and our value proposition that we know no matter what, DCRs, 7 to 9 attorneys, depending on kind of where things are at, we're going to have that 3 to 5, call it 10 to $150 million deal. That's really what we're looking for. And then ideally, it's to take that from 5 to 8 and then 8 to 10. By the time we get to that point, we'll probably be a much larger firm.
Yeah. I like that. If you had that will be my last question. If you had a magic wand that you could wave and solve one thing right now, what would that one thing be? And it can be like right now. You said that you have like daily goals. is there something like bothering you? Like,
well, in addition to like, ending world homelessness and, the war in Ukraine or whatever, but I'm going to assume you're focused solely on, hey, I'm not God, right? But I'm assuming you're focusing solely on business. So if I could wave a magic wand as it pertains to us, I mean, I would like to try to end inflation to a degree. I think that if you look at the indexes, it'll say inflation has been controlled or whatever, maybe at I guess at a kind of macro level. But I really feel like on the ground, and I don't know about you, but as a small business owner and just kind of a person living in this country, it's really the value of our dollar. I see it every day. I see the cost of services go up, the cost of everything, and it's become a real challenge, I think, to in business, because like I know in our instance, it's like, God, I mean, we have really just put in a ton of effort, and there's been years where we're like, oh, we're on our way, we're going to be rich soon or whatever, and then the economy changes and you learn in an instant, like that things can change very quickly. So for me, if I could wave a magic wand, it would bring a little more stability across the board in the economy and pricing, and not having I bought some coffee for the office today for our Keurig machine. For perspective, 11 Keurigs of a brand coffee was like $22. So that's the world that we're in right now, and that's the world that we're in when it comes to paying for people too, as well. And so as a small business owner, it's really challenging because, kids are coming out of law school and, they're making $250,000. They don't, they've never written a contract before, right? I wouldn't trade it. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't trade it, but that's what I would like to. And I don't think I'm the only person. I think that's, a big part of this election. But I think that's having a big effect on all of us at every level.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I do hear that a lot from other law firms too, that a lot of kids are leaving law school right now and they just have so many options. That's the thing too.
Right.
Like they're not very loyal. So like as soon as they find another better deal, they would jump and they like
in a second.
Right. Like it's like they like a company. Yeah. So you're right. Like if you knew that you were going to put $250,000 a year in this person, but this person was going to stay with you, you're going to train them, they're going to stay with you. But that's great deal. But that's not the reality. That's not what's happening right now. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in the next few years, if that's going to change.
Well, that's why retaining talent and finding the right people that's a fit for them and us is so hard, but it's also so rewarding when you find it, because you just have to be much more so than years ago where it was like you went to law school, go out, work for a firm. You got to find non-traditional people.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly, and that's what I like. I mean, I spend so much time on marketing and all that. I'm not sitting billing every single second. I am working hard because that's the way we generate revenue and all that. But you just have to, you really have to be, if you're not in a bit large firm, you do need to be an entrepreneur truly in this day and age in law. And I think it'll continue that way. And I think it's going to be, the profession's going to be better. I think the clients are going to be better served, but there's going to be an evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Pat. Like this has been such a great conversation. I love having conversations like this. We always learn so much from each other. And
thank you for the opportunity to talk with you.